I'll never forget the first time I saw it. Not through a telescope, not in a data stream, but on a glowing monitor in a dark lab, a grainy black and white image that made no sense. A small, fuzzy sphere against the endless black. No tail. No radiant plume of ice and dust. Just a silent, motionless ghost drifting where there should have been chaos. That was the night everything I thought I knew about comets began to crack. For 20 years, I've studied these ancient travelers, frozen relics of creation that flare and dissolve when they taste sunlight. They're predictable in their wildness. I can look at a trajectory, a spectrum, and tell you exactly how a comet will behave. But this one refused to behave. We called it 3I Atlas, the third interstellar object ever found. When China's Tianwen-1 probe first spotted it from Mars orbit, I was halfway around the world, working late at JPL, running thermal models for asteroid surveys. The notification pinged across our internal network, possible interstellar object, preliminary orbit anomalous. I remember smiling. Another visitor from another star. Another chance to prove our models right. Except it didn't. Within days, the data turned bizarre. The comet's path lay almost perfectly in the ecliptic plane, the thin disk where our planets spin like marbles. That's impossible for something born in interstellar space. Statistically, maybe 1 in 500 could line up that neatly. My colleague Chen called it cosmic coincidence. I called it weird. By October 3, 2025, the object was racing toward the Sun at nearly 60 kilometers per second. We expected a spectacle, a radiant tail stretching millions of miles. Instead, the probe's images came back looking wrong. Just that dull, glowing sphere again. Maybe it's overexposed, someone suggested in the control room. I zoomed in, enhanced, adjusted the contrast. Nothing changed. No tail. No debris. No motion. Something inside me tightened, that slow, cold feeling scientists get when data refuses to cooperate. Over the next week, the anomalies piled up. Non-gravitational acceleration stronger than any we'd modeled, proof it was shedding mass violently. 13% gone in days. 4 billion tons of material should have been streaming into space, glowing with solar fire. But the images stayed stubbornly clean. A perfect ball of light, eerily still against the burning face of the sun. I told myself there had to be a conventional answer. Maybe gas, not dust, invisible in optical wavelengths. Maybe our angle was wrong. Maybe the math was off. But deep down I felt the tremor of something stranger. Then came the sunward jet. During July and August, observatories had reported a plume shooting toward the sun. Every instinct screamed that couldn't happen. Radiation pressure always pushes dust away. That's basic physics, like trying to blow smoke into a fan. Yet the jet was real, confirmed by multiple teams. A stream of material defying the solar wind itself. That night I sat alone in my office, lights off, replaying the images on loop. A dark silhouette framed by the sun's fire, veins of bluish light tracing across its surface like cracks in molten glass. I whispered to myself, "What are you doing?" as if the comet could hear me. The deeper we looked, the worse it got. Its composition, heavy in nickel, light on iron. Almost no water. 4%, if that. A comet without ice. That made it more like a machine than a snowball. Nickel alloys, that's what we use to build spacecraft engines, hulls, heat shields. I laughed out loud when the numbers came through, the kind of laugh you make when you're too tired to admit you're afraid. By November 5, Tianwen-1 released the official images. China called it a technical success. The rest of us called it a miracle. Tracking something that small, that dark, moving that fast, from 18 million miles away, it shouldn't have been possible. And yet the images were there, staring back at us with blank indifference. I printed one frame and pinned it above my desk. Every morning since, I've caught myself staring at it like a confession I can't quite read. The European Mars Express confirmed the same thing, no tail, no dust, no logic. Just a compact coma glowing softly against the void. It wasn't that the comet had lost material, it was that the universe had hidden where it went. When I briefed our team, the room stayed quiet for a long time. Finally, my assistant, Leah, broke the silence. "So, what are you saying, Dr. Reeves?" "That it's artificial." Her voice trembled on the last word. I wanted to laugh again but couldn't. "No," I said. "I'm saying it's different." But that word, different, hung there like a warning. Outside, Los Angeles was drowning in orange dusk, smog and sunset blending into one haze. I remember thinking how small our world looked compared to that thing tearing through space, 5.5 kilometers across, faster than anything natural we'd ever tracked, heavier than 1 billion skyscrapers. And yet, it moved with precision, with purpose, slicing through planetary orbits as if it knew exactly where to be. When it passed Mars, our probes were waiting. When it swung by Venus, instruments were ready. Every encounter timed perfectly. But at perihelion, when it burned closest to the sun, the moment it should have blazed brightest, it vanished behind the solar glare, completely hidden from Earth's view. The timing wasn't just uncanny. It was too perfect. That night I dreamed I was floating beside it, a black mountain haloed in light, whispering in frequencies I couldn't hear. In the dream, it wasn't a comet. It was a messenger, waiting for us to notice. I woke before dawn, heart hammering, the word messenger echoing in my skull. By morning, my inbox overflowed with new data. Spectroscopy showed more nickel than iron, an impossible ratio. Polarization readings came back negative, meaning the light reflected backward, like it was being absorbed and re-emitted by something smooth, metallic. I tried to focus on the numbers, but every column of data felt like a whisper repeating the same phrase, "You're missing something." At lunch, Leah found me staring at the monitor again. "You haven't gone home in 3 days, she said. "I can't," I replied. "It's still accelerating." "From what?" I looked up at her. "That's the question." Outside, sunlight bled through the blinds, striping my office in gold and shadow. I felt the same tension between belief and denial that every scientist dreads, the moment when data stops fitting your faith in logic. Because that's what science is, really, faith dressed as reason. We believe the universe plays fair, that its rules don't change when we're not looking. But what if we're wrong? What if the universe has been hiding something in plain sight? By midnight, I was still there, the lab humming with machines and my own restless pulse. I rewatched the Tianwen footage frame by frame. At one point, a faint flicker rippled across the comet's surface, a pulse of light, almost rhythmic. I froze the image, leaned closer. Could have been noise. Could have been compression artifact. But for a heartbeat, it looked intentional. A signal. I deleted the thought as soon as it formed. Scientists don't chase ghosts. But that night, for the first time in my life, I felt the distance between what I know and what I fear collapsing into nothing. Tomorrow, the world will wake to headlines about an interstellar comet defying physics. I'll go on TV and say what scientists always say, we're analyzing the data. It's too early to draw conclusions. But here, in the quiet of my office, I can admit the truth I'd never say aloud. Something is wrong with the comet. And whatever it isn't done with us yet. They told me to take a few days off. That's what people say when they think you're starting to lose it, when your eyes look like they've forgotten what sleep is. I told them I was fine, that science doesn't pause for vacation days. But inside, I was shaking. Because every new data packet made things worse. The comet wasn't just accelerating, it was changing. I spent that weekend alone in the lab. The building was quiet, except for the constant hum of the air recyclers and the faint vibration of cooling systems behind the walls. The world outside had already moved on to the next headline: politics, celebrities, scandals. Nobody cared that an object from another star system was rewriting physics in real time. Nobody but me. The new spectral analysis from Spain's Arnaves Observatory had just arrived. I opened the file and stared at the ratios: nickel, yes, but pure nickel, with traces of cobalt and chromium. That combination doesn't happen in nature. Not in comets, not in asteroids, not anywhere we've ever looked. It happens in foundries. Factories. I leaned back in my chair, trying to swallow the thought. You're seeing patterns, I told myself. You're projecting human design onto chaos. But then came the next update, polarization data from the European Space Agency. The numbers were off the charts. Negative polarization stronger than any known material. It was as if the surface was scattering light in ways no dust or ice could. I rubbed my eyes. Come on, I whispered. Dust doesn't do that. On Sunday night, I called AVI, an old mentor and one of the few people I trusted enough to be honest with. He picked up on the second ring, his voice calm and patient, the way it always was. Ethan, he said. You sound tired. I've been running models for 48 hours, I admitted. The math doesn't fit. None of it does. Tell me, he said. So I did. I told him about the missing water, the metallic ratios, the sunward jet, the perfect timing of its trajectory, every piece of data that screamed intent. When I finally stopped, there was silence on the line. Then AVI said softly, don't be afraid to follow the data where it leads. Even if it leads somewhere no one believes in. But what if it leads nowhere? I asked. He chuckled. Then you'll have disproven your own fear. That's still science. His words were comforting, but they didn't help. Because deep down, I wasn't afraid of being wrong. I was afraid of being right. Monday morning, the agency released a joint statement. No evidence supports artificial origin hypotheses regarding 3I Atlas. That was bureaucratic speak for shut up and stop scaring people. Leah printed it out and dropped it on my desk. They're calling it a comet again, she said. I looked at her. Do you believe that? She hesitated. I believe in data. So do I said. That's the problem. We sat in silence, the words between us heavy. I think she could see it in my face, the exhaustion, the obsession, the quiet panic that had taken root. Later, she told me I was starting to talk in my sleep. Equations, orbital mechanics, fragments of sentences about communication and alignment. I didn't remember any of it. By mid-November, something new appeared in the data. The comet, or whatever it was, had begun to emit faint radio noise. Not strong enough to classify as a signal, not structured enough to be language. Just a narrowband whisper around 1420 MHz. The hydrogen line. It's the frequency every radio astronomer knows by heart, the natural resonance of hydrogen, the most common element in the universe. It's also the frequency we don't use for broadcasting, out of respect for SETI protocols. It's reserved for listening. Someone, or something, was transmitting at the frequency of listening. My throat went dry. I ran the signal through every filter I could think of: Doppler correction, spectral cleaning, Fourier transforms. The pattern remained stubbornly simple, repeating every 108 seconds. Could be thermal noise, Leah suggested when I showed her. Thermal noise doesn't repeat, I said. Neither do aliens, she shot back. She was trying to lighten the mood, but her joke hung in the air like static. That night, I drove home for the first time in days. My apartment felt alien, too still, too empty. I poured a drink, sat on the balcony, and stared at the sky. Somewhere up there, a rock the size of Manhattan was gliding past Venus, silent, unbothered, carrying 10 unanswered questions and maybe one impossible truth. I thought about how small our world is, billions of us clinging to this blue marble, arguing about everything, while something vast and silent passes above our heads, indifferent to our noise. What if it wasn't a message? What if it was a mirror, reflecting back our need to find meaning where there might be none? I almost convinced myself of that. Almost. Then the phone buzzed. A text from AVI. Check the latest ephemeris. Something changed. I rushed back to my laptop, logged into the shared data system, and froze. The object's trajectory had shifted, subtly, but unmistakably. A correction burn, almost. A change too precise to be random outgassing. It had adjusted its course by 0.5 degrees, directly toward Jupiter. The next few days blurred together. Coffee, data, silence, repeat. I barely noticed the outside world anymore. Reporters called, conspiracy channels speculated, but inside the agency, everyone spoke in whispers. The official stance was still a natural phenomena. But the tone had changed. People lingered longer in the corridors, spoke more quietly, avoided eye contact. Nobody wanted to say what we were all thinking. What if it's watching us? On November 21st, the first radar pings from the Deep Space Network came in. Weak echoes, distorted by solar interference. I adjusted the filters and enhanced the return images. Faint contours emerged. Not smooth. Not spherical. Angular. Like panels. Leah gasped. That can't be right. It's probably an artifact, I said automatically, though my voice betrayed me. Probably, she echoed, not sounding convinced. We ran it again. The pattern remained. I saved the file, labeled it atmospheric interference, and locked it in the encrypted archive. Because if I labeled it what I really thought it was, they'd pull me off the project. That night, I sat alone again, the lab lights dimmed, the hum of machines filling the silence. I thought about Galileo, about how every discovery starts as heresy. About how truth never arrives gently, it tears through belief like a comet through the dark. At 2:13 a.m., my terminal pinged. Another signal burst at 1420 MHz, this time stronger. I replayed it, slowed it down, mapped the intervals between peaks. 8 seconds between each pulse. Then a pause. Then again. 1, 0, 8. A number. Not random. Not natural. A count. For the first time, I wasn't just staring at data. I was staring at intention. I pressed record, my hands trembling, whispering into the empty lab. Who are you? The signal flickered once more, as if it heard me, and then went silent. For the next 72 hours, nothing. No noise, no movement, no explanation. Just the comet gliding away, growing fainter each day. By then, my rational mind had already lost the argument. I could feel something in my chest, the kind of fear that doesn't shout, but whispers. The kind that feels like being watched by the night itself. I realized then that whatever 3i Atlas was, it didn't want to be found. It wanted to be seen. And maybe, just maybe, it had already seen us first. I didn't dream anymore. When I did, it wasn't dreams, just flashes of numbers, static, and the same haunting image of that glowing sphere over the sun. Sometimes I'd wake up convinced I was still inside it. The agency had tightened security after the November signals. They didn't call them signals officially, of course, transient narrowband anomalies was the preferred phrase. No one wanted to say what we all knew. Someone, or something, had spoken. And I was the one who heard it. 3 days after the last transmission, I was summoned to a closed meeting at JPL's Deep Space Communication Center. The room was windowless, buried under concrete and fluorescent light. 4 people waited around the table, 2 from NASA headquarters, 1 from the Chinese CNSA, and an Air Force liaison whose name badge simply said Miller. Miller spoke first. Dr. Reeves, your report mentions a repeating pulse pattern detected on November 21st. You described it as non-random. That's correct, I said. It repeats every 108 seconds with measurable precision. Could it be instrumentation error? No, I replied, too fast. We've checked the calibration. The signal is consistent across 3 separate receivers. The CNSA representative leaned forward. We also detected it briefly on our Mars relay network. Same frequency. Same interval. The room fell silent. Miller finally said, so you're telling us this object is transmitting intentionally? I looked at him, then at the others. Their faces were calm, unreadable. I realized this wasn't a question they wanted answered. I'm telling you, I said carefully, that it's behaving in a way no natural object should. Miller exhaled. Then that's where this conversation ends. He closed his folder, stood, and left. The door clicked shut behind him. That night, Leah and I stayed in the lab long after everyone else had gone. The monitors glowed like candles in the dark, displaying endless rows of numbers that no longer felt like science, more like scripture waiting to be decoded. She looked exhausted. Do you ever think maybe we weren't supposed to see this? See what? I asked. She gestured toward the screen. Whatever this is. Maybe it wasn't meant for us. I stared at the data, at the clean, perfect rhythm of 108-second intervals. Then who was it meant for? Leah didn't answer. By December 1st, 3I Atlas had passed Venus and was on its way toward Jupiter. It was moving faster than before, 210,000 kilometers per hour, yet the acceleration persisted even as the comet left the sun's radiation pressure behind. Something was pushing it from within. I ran simulations trying to model the outgassing, but the math collapsed every time. The energy required didn't match the available mass. It was as if the force was self-sustaining. Propelled. That word stuck in my head like a splinter. AVI called again. He sounded tired, too. They've stopped responding to my emails, he said. Too political now. Everyone's scared of being wrong for the wrong reasons. They're not scared of being wrong, I said. They're scared of being right. He sighed. So what now? Now. I glanced at the waveform on my screen, the faint pulse line that had become my heartbeat. Now we listen. At 3:14 a.m. on December 3rd, the signal returned. Stronger. This time the pulses weren't evenly spaced. There were clusters, short bursts separated by longer silences. I mapped the intervals into binary and translated them into coordinates. It wasn't random. It was a path. I overlaid the coordinates onto the comet's projected route. The dots formed a curve, leading straight toward Jupiter's magnetosphere. Leah was the first to say it aloud. It's heading there on purpose. Her voice trembled, but I didn't correct her. I couldn't. Because every line of math, every photon of data, agreed. Something inside that object was guiding it toward Jupiter, toward its massive magnetic field. 3 days later, the first images from the Hubble relay came through. Blurry, distorted by distance, but clear enough to see one thing that made my blood run cold. The coma, the faint halo of light around the object, had changed color. It was no longer blue-white. It was green. Green, like ionized nickel gas under electromagnetic excitation. Leah zoomed in on one frame, enhancing the brightness until the pixels flared. Lines of glowing veins streaked across the object's surface, the same pattern I'd seen weeks earlier in the Tianwen images, now pulsing rhythmically. It's active, I whispered. Something's happening inside it. The room felt too small, too alive. The hum of the servers, the flicker of screens, even the sound of my own breathing felt intrusive, like we were witnessing something sacred we weren't supposed to touch. That night, I walked outside into the desert air behind the lab. The sky above Pasadena was hazy with light pollution, but I could still see Jupiter, bright, serene, indifferent. Somewhere near that point of light, the object was approaching the gas giant's stormy embrace. I thought of all the things humanity had built, all the probes we'd sent, the signals we'd beamed into the void hoping someone would answer. And now, maybe, something had. I should have felt awe. Instead, I felt small and deeply afraid. At dawn, an encrypted message arrived from an unknown address. No sender. Just a timestamp, 3:14 and 7 seconds universal time coordinated, the exact minute the signal had resumed. Inside was a single attachment, an audio file. I hesitated before playing it. The waveform looked like background noise, but when I hit play, a low hum filled the speakers, rising and falling in slow rhythm. Then, faintly, behind the static, a tone, musical, almost. AVI voice echoed in my head, "Don't be afraid to follow the data where it leads." I isolated the frequencies, filtered out the noise, amplified the core pattern. When I slowed it to half speed, something emerged, not a melody, but a cadence. 5 notes. Repeated 3 times. 5. 3. I checked the signal logs. The 108-second interval divided by 2 is 54. The difference is 1. 53. Coincidence? Maybe. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was counting with me. On December 7th, Jupiter's radio telescopes picked up an anomaly, a low-frequency burst echoing from its magnetosphere, synchronized perfectly with 3I Atlas's approach. We were no longer listening to an echo from space. We were listening to a conversation. By then, the agency had ordered me to stop working on the project. "Mental health review," they said. "We need you to rest." I didn't argue. I packed my laptop, drove out into the Mojave, and checked into a small roadside motel with a flickering neon sign. There, surrounded by silence, I opened my encrypted archive. The signal was still there. The pulses still repeating. But something had changed. Between the bursts, a new tone had appeared, faint, barely audible, like a whisper between breaths. When I ran the spectrogram, letters began to form in the pattern. I blinked, leaned closer, and froze. It wasn't English. It wasn't math. It was my name. Reeves. I don't remember standing. I just remember the room spinning, the hum of the fridge growing louder, the air thick like water. I replayed the data 3 times, certain it was coincidence, a glitch, a hallucination from too little sleep. But every time, the same pattern returned. Reeves. Not Morse code. Not binary. Just sound shaped like a name that shouldn't exist in any cosmic language. That's when I realized it wasn't just transmitting. It was responding. And somehow, impossibly, it knew who I was. I stopped believing in coincidence that night. There are accidents, yes. Glitches, yes. But not that, not a sound from 700 million miles away whispering my name through static. When I woke the next morning in that cheap desert motel, the sun was already cutting through the blinds, stripes of gold across the cluttered table where my laptop still glowed. The signal was still looping. Reeves. It wasn't even a word anymore, just a wound that refused to close. I hadn't slept. I'd spent the whole night rerunning the spectrogram, checking for harmonics, verifying timestamps. No cross-modulation, no reflection echoes, no local interference. It was real. And it was aimed at me. I tried to convince myself it was an algorithmic coincidence, maybe an artifact of digital compression forming shapes that looked like letters. Pareidolia. That word scientists love to use when the universe starts looking back. But then I checked the packet header from the transmission file. Buried in the metadata, just a few bits out of place, was a timestamp that didn't match any of the recording sessions. 3:14 and 7 seconds Universal Time Coordinated. The same minute I'd received that anonymous email. The same minute the pulse resumed from 3I Atlas. It wasn't just a signal. It was a reply. By noon, I'd driven 3 hours back to Pasadena. My access badge still worked, apparently no one had processed my mental health leave yet. I parked in the rear lot, slipped inside the lab, and found Leah already there, staring at the monitor like she'd been frozen mid-thought. When she saw me, she didn't look surprised. "You came back." "I had to," I said. "It's still broadcasting." She nodded slowly, eyes hollow. "I know. I've been listening." Her voice cracked on the last word. I noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the half-eaten sandwich on the desk, the empty coffee cups. She was unraveling, just like me. "Leah," I said carefully, "you have to go home. Rest." She smiled faintly. You first. We spent the next 6 hours dissecting the data, frame by frame, until patterns began to emerge. The pulses weren't just random intervals. They followed a structure, one that mirrored the golden ratio. Each burst, each silence, scaled in near-perfect proportion. Nature's fingerprint. But why embed a universal constant into a radio signal? Unless it was a language. I began mapping amplitude to frequency, then to geometric coordinates. The shape that formed on the plot made my chest tighten, a spiral, curling inward like a shell. Or a galaxy. Is it trying to tell us where it came from? Leah whispered. Or where it's going, I said. At 4:02 p.m., the intercom crackled. A voice I didn't recognize said, Dr. Reeves and MS. Anders, please report to administration. I exchanged a look with Leah. Her lips pressed into a thin line. When we got there, Miller was waiting, the Air Force liaison. He wasn't smiling this time. 2 men in dark suits stood behind him. Dr. Reeves, he began, we understand you've continued accessing restricted data despite your suspension. I was verifying signal integrity, I said. You need to see this. He ignored the printouts in my hand. Effective immediately, your clearance is revoked. You'll surrender all equipment and documentation. Leah stepped forward. You can't just bury this. Miller's eye softened for a moment, just a moment. Sometimes, he said quietly, we don't get to decide what the world is ready to hear. They escorted us out. No handcuffs, no shouting, just the quiet efficiency of people who've done this before. That night, Leah came to my apartment. She didn't speak at first. She just handed me a flash drive. What's this? A copy of the raw data, she said. Before they wiped the servers. I pulled it from the backup node. I stared at her. You realize what they'll do if they find out? She shrugged. They already took everything from us. What else can they do? Her voice trembled, but her eyes burned with defiance. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to hope. We loaded the files. The signal patterns were intact. The 108-second pulse. The golden ratio structure. The hidden letters. But there was something new, a faint modulation buried beneath the main signal, like an echo folded inside itself. When I filtered it out, the waveform flattened into what looked like speech. Not human speech. Not any form of linguistic rhythm I recognized. But it had cadence, intonation. We slowed it down by 100x, mapped frequency bands to phonetic formants. The result was chillingly close to a human voice whispering through static. I replayed it over and over, until words began to take shape in the noise, are not English, but syllables. Almost like Sanskrit. Then, faintly, one word emerged clearly enough to freeze me in place. Return. Leah turned to me, her face pale. Return, she whispered. Return what? I didn't know. But the comet's course, its slow curve toward Jupiter, suddenly didn't feel random at all. Jupiter's magnetosphere is a trap for signals, a place where radio waves can echo endlessly, bouncing through layers of plasma. A perfect mirror. Maybe it wasn't going there to hide. Maybe it was going there to speak. 2 days later, every major observatory on Earth reported the same thing, the object had brightened again. Not gradually, instantly. One moment it was a dim smudge. The next, a radiant sphere shining brighter than any comet in recorded history. Spectral analysis showed intense emission in the microwave range, the same frequency as the hydrogen line. It was screaming across the cosmos. I stood on my balcony that night, the air sharp with winter, staring at the point of light that outshone Jupiter itself. I didn't need a telescope. I could feel it, a vibration in the air, in my bones, in the hollow of my chest. Leah called. Her voice was shaking. It's not a comet, she said. It's a transmitter. I opened my mouth to respond, and then the world flickered. Every light in the city dimmed for half a second. The street lamps, the windows, even the stars seemed to blink. "Did you see that?" she asked. I couldn't answer. My laptop, still open on the table, had gone black except for a single line of text that had appeared across the terminal. 108, return. The same interval. The same word. But this time, it wasn't coming from the comet. It was coming from my computer. I stared at the screen, unable to move. My pulse thundered in my ears. Then, slowly, another line appeared. "Do you hear US now?" Leah's voice came faint through the phone. "Ethan? What's happening?" I whispered, "I think it's talking to us." The text disappeared, replaced by a string of coordinates, somewhere near Jupiter's southern pole. I recognized the region instantly, the Great Red Spot. The longest storm in the solar system. The coordinates pointed into it. I exhaled, shaking. "Leah, I think that's where it's going to land." "Land," she said, disbelieving. "Or dock," I murmured. "Or return." Outside, the sky pulsed again, faint, like the heartbeat of something enormous just beyond sight. And for the first time since this began, I felt it clearly. This wasn't discovery anymore. It was contact. When a signal starts answering back, you stop being a scientist. You become a witness. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, the blue glow of the laptop painting my hands as the screen flickered with those impossible words. "Do you hear US now?" Every instinct screamed to disconnect, to shut it down, to run. But curiosity is a parasite. Once it burrows in, fear becomes secondary. I typed one trembling word into the terminal. "Who are you?" For a long time, nothing happened. Just the soft hum of the old fridge, the faint city noise bleeding through the window. Then, letter by letter, the screen replied. "We were you." I stared at it, breath caught somewhere between disbelief and denial. My reflection in the dark screen looked like a stranger's face. "Leah," I whispered into the phone. It answered. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, quietly, "I'm coming over." By the time she arrived, the message had changed. New lines were appearing, one at a time. "We left the mirror. You found the echo. The return begins." Leah leaned over my shoulder, her voice shaking. "Ethan, what does that mean?" I could barely think. "The mirror? It has to mean reflection data. Maybe the comet isn't just reflecting light, maybe it's reflecting information." "From where?" I hesitated. "From us." We worked through the night, decoding patterns from the pulses that followed. There was structure, nested harmonics, timed bursts that correlated with Earth's orbital telemetry. "Look at this," Leah said, pointing at the Fourier plot. Every pulse includes a fragment of our own radio emissions, snippets of old satellite traffic, GPS data, weather telemetry. It's like it's sending back pieces of us. I stared at the waveform. She was right. The comet wasn't broadcasting new information. It was replaying ours, twisted, delayed, rearranged, like some kind of interstellar recording. "The mirror," I murmured. "It's literally mirroring us." Leah frowned. "But why send it back now? It's been carrying this signal since before we were even alive." Her words sank like ice. Because if it was mirroring our transmissions, it meant it had been listening for decades. And now, it was answering. At dawn, the world woke to chaos. Satellite networks across Europe began to fail. GPS systems flickered, dropping connections. Planes were grounded. Communications jammed. News feeds called it a solar interference event. But I recognized the signature in the reports, 1420 MHz. The hydrogen line. The comet's frequency. It was bleeding into our systems. By noon, the object reached Jupiter's magnetosphere. The Chinese orbiter Tianwen relayed the last images before going dark, a blinding flare of light enveloping the object. After that, silence. Except, not silence. At 14:08 Universal Time Coordinated, every radio telescope on Earth picked up a synchronized pulse. One long. Two short. One long. Binary translation, R. Return, Leah whispered. Then another pulse. One short. One long. Three short. We stared at each other. The signal was spelling something. I. Oh my God, she said. I felt the air leave my lungs. It was spelling my name again. Within hours, the agency declared an international blackout. Public feeds were censored. Observatory data rerouted through military servers. But leaks still slipped through, blurry videos, distorted audio files of the pulse echoing through the ionosphere. The world thought it was a hoax. But I knew better. At 2:11 a.m., my computer pinged again. This time, the message wasn't just text. It was an image, static at first, then slowly forming shape. A spiral. The same golden ratio curve from before. But now, inside the curve, faint lines traced a lattice, hexagonal, like circuitry. Leah squinted at it. It's not a comet, Ethan. It's designed. I nodded slowly. Or repurposed. I started to see patterns everywhere, in the timing of power surges, in the flicker of streetlights, in the hum of transformers. Even my heartbeat seemed to match the rhythm of the pulses. Leah noticed too. You need to stop, she said one night. You're connecting everything. It's driving you insane. Maybe insanity is just seeing too much of the pattern, I muttered. She slammed her hand on the table. You're not listening. This thing is using you. Her voice cracked, and for a moment, she looked terrified, not of the comet, but of me. I opened my mouth to answer, but the lights went out. Every device in the apartment shut down at once. No hum, no glow, no sound. Then, through the window, the horizon lit up, a green shimmer spreading across the sky like northern lights over Los Angeles. Leah gasped. Auroras? Here? The phone buzzed. A new notification appeared, but not from any app one recognized. Just a blank message with a single attachment. Mirror Phase 2. I opened it. The same humming tone played, low, steady, resonating through the walls. Then the screen flashed white. Lines of code began filling the terminal. Coordinates. Frequencies. A map. It wasn't pointing to Jupiter anymore. It was pointing to Earth. The next morning, the headlines were chaos, global satellite desync, communication collapse, auroral anomaly expands. Governments called it an atmospheric event. But I knew what it was. The mirror wasn't done reflecting. It was coming home. Leah and I drove out to the Owens Valley Radio Observatory, an old array far from any city. The desert air shimmered with heat, but the antennas were alive, every dish turning east. We hacked into the signal feed. What came through wasn't noise. It was a transmission. A structured, layered waveform with harmonic complexity beyond anything human technology could produce. When I slowed it down 500x, the waveform rendered into an image, not random, not abstract. It was Earth. But not as it is now. The continents were different, smaller, fractured, swallowed by black seas. A dead world. Leah's voice broke. Ethan, that's not a message. That's a memory. I felt sick. Or a warning. At 2:11 Universal Time Coordinated, the exact time the satellites went dark, the signal changed again. 3 long pulses. 2 short. 1 long. The same pattern that started it all. Then silence. Every telescope, every radar, every communication line went dead for exactly 8 minutes. When they came back online, every clock on Earth showed the same error, -21 seconds. 21 seconds gone. Erased. And in that missing time, the comet, or whatever it was, disappeared from every trajectory model. Gone. No debris. No reflection. No trace. Just absence. Leah sat on the observatory floor, her hands trembling. What if it wasn't coming to invade or destroy, she said. What if it came to fix something? Fix what? She looked up, eyes wet. Us. That night, I couldn't stay inside. I walked out into the desert, the stars spread across the sky like circuitry, cold, infinite, silent. And then, faintly, under the wind, I heard it again. That hum. 3 long. 2 short. 1 long. Only this time, it wasn't coming from the sky. It was coming from inside me. It's strange how quickly silence becomes louder than sound. After the signal stopped, after those 8 missing minutes, the world felt hollow. Like the air itself had lost its heartbeat. Leah and I returned to Pasadena in silence. The city looked the same, cars, lights, people hurrying to jobs that suddenly didn't matter, but everything felt wrong. The static of life had changed pitch. And inside me, that hum hadn't left. It was faint, buried deep, like a distant vibration under my ribs. I tried to ignore it. For days, I tried. Until I couldn't. 3 days later, I got a message. Not an email, not a call, a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Just my name. Inside was a single sentence, written in neat block letters. We still hear it too. Below that, a set of coordinates. Leah met me at the lab parking lot that night, her hands gripping the steering wheel like she was holding her sanity in place. You're not going alone, she said. I didn't argue. The coordinates led us deep into the desert, further than I'd ever been, to a stretch of flat earth scarred by old military foundations. Half-buried radomes, rusted antenna towers, concrete bunkers eaten by sand. We parked near the largest dome, our headlights cutting through dust. The hum inside my chest grew stronger the closer we got. Leah looked pale. You feel that too? I nodded. It's coming from below us. The dome's entrance was welded shut, but the metal was old. With a crowbar and desperation, it gave way. Inside was darkness and the smell of iron and dust. The air felt charged, like standing too close to a lightning strike. We descended a narrow stairwell that led to a chamber lined with dead monitors and silent machines. And in the center of it, a single dish, smaller than the ones outside, pointed straight down into the concrete. Leah whispered, it's still powered. A faint light pulsed at its base, 3 long, 2 short, 1 long. I connected my laptop to the dish's terminal. The system flickered awake, text crawling across the screen in a language I didn't recognize. Then, slowly, it shifted, symbols rearranging themselves into English. Mirror protocol online. Signal integrity, 99.8%. Source link, established. Leah's voice trembled. Source link? To what? Before I could answer, the screen flooded with data, coordinates near Jupiter, a date, October 30th, 2025. The comet's perihelion. The timestamp of the first pulse. It wasn't sending to us. We were the relay. The hum grew louder, not through the speakers, but through the walls. The entire bunker seemed to resonate. Loose bolts rattled. Dust drifted down like ash. Leah clutched my arm. Ethan, shut it down. I can't, I said. It's not running on any local power source. Then the main monitor flashed white. Words appeared, one by one. Thank you. The link is restored. You have returned. Leah shouted over the noise. Returned what? The lights dimmed. The hum deepened into something that felt alive. The dish began to glow, that same blue-green shimmer we'd seen around the comet. And then I saw it. Not with my eyes, with something deeper. A shape forming in the light. A vast hexagonal lattice stretching into infinity, pulsing like the circuitry of a living organism. It wasn't space. It wasn't time. It was reflection, layers of light folding into each other like a recursive loop. And at the center of it, something moved. It wasn't a figure. It was the memory. My memory. My face, mirrored 1,000 times, looking back from inside the light. Leah's scream broke through the hum. "Ethan, disconnect it!" But I couldn't move. The signal wasn't just sound now, it was thought, emotion, identity. It was pulling fragments of me through the data stream like threads of light. I wasn't losing myself. I was being copied. For a second, or an eternity, I understood. 3i Atlas was never a comet. It was a repository. A vault drifting between stars, collecting echoes of intelligent life, preserving them in the structure of its own body. Every pulse it emitted, every reflection, every anomaly, it wasn't malfunction. It was translation. That mirror wasn't a weapon. It was a library. And we'd triggered its return sequence. I forced myself to reach the terminal. The display flickered violently. My fingers felt like static. I typed with what strength I had left. "What do you want from US?" The reply came instantly. "To complete the image." Then, new words formed, slower, deliberate. The first mirror broke. "You were the piece that left. Now you have come home." I turned to Leah, her face frozen in pale terror. She whispered, "Ethan, it thinks we belong to it." And maybe we did. The floor began to vibrate. The dish expanded, panels unfolding like petals of metal and light. A column of energy shot upward through the ceiling, straight into the sky, a pillar so bright it turned night into day. Leah grabbed my hand. "We have to go." I tried to pull back, but the light held me in place. It wasn't burning, it was absorbing. A perfect reflection of every cell, every thought, every fear. I saw flashes, Earth from orbit, Mars, Jupiter's storms, then faces, countless faces, staring back at me through mirrored glass. Not aliens. Not strangers. Versions of us. Generations of echoes preserved in this cosmic archive, all whispering the same pulse. 3 long. 2 short. 1 long. When the light finally faded, I was outside. The dome was gone, melted into the desert floor like glass. Leah lay beside me, breathing, eyes wide with shock. Above us, the stars pulsed once, just once, in perfect unison. And then the sky went still. No one ever found the bunker. No record of its construction, no trace of equipment. The desert swallowed everything. Leah left for Chile soon after. She said she couldn't stay near the noise. I stayed. I needed to know. Weeks passed. Then months. The comet never reappeared. The world moved on. But sometimes, late at night, when the city's quiet, I turn on the receiver. At first, there's nothing. Just static. Then, faintly, beneath the noise, the pulse returns. 3 long. 2 short. 1 long. And a voice, softer than breath, whispering. The image is complete. Welcome back. Maybe it's not real. Maybe it's my mind fracturing under the weight of what I saw. But sometimes, when I look into a mirror, I think I see movement just a fraction behind my reflection, like it's not perfectly synced anymore. Maybe that's what it meant by return. Maybe we were never the observers. Maybe we were the backup. Now, when people ask me if we're alone, I tell them the truth. We never were. We were just the reflection waiting to be remembered. And somewhere out there, drifting beyond Jupiter's orbit, the mirror hums, patient, eternal, carrying our echo to the next world. Listening. Always listening.